All right, Richie, let's wrap up with this. We talked about this a lot, and I asked Mike about this specifically over the offseason. I was pretty straightforward. I've heard other people ask about this, and in the moment, I didn't have a big problem with his answer. But now looking back, hindsight being 2020, I do maybe have a little bit different of a take here. When you look at the snub last year and you look at getting left out of the playoff and you look at the way that they felt so bad, I asked Mike a couple of times, a couple of different ways, once in Charlotte, once in Tampa, just, hey, how are you using the snub to motivate your players to try and get them, over that? And I do think the snub kind of broke Mike Norvell. I don't think he's the same person since then. But did he maybe handle that the wrong way? And did he should he maybe have leaned a little bit more into that? Because his big take was like, hey, I'm not going to use that. We're focused on this team. And that all sounds good in the moment. But then you look back and you're like, wow, you basically preached climb and work and effort and how you do anything is how you do everything. And then when that carpet got snatched up under you, you maybe should have leaned back into using it a little bit more than you did. And instead of ignoring it, maybe taking it head on and using it to motivate your players. And we hear that all the time in sports. A team will lose the championship and then they come out. Like I remember, so I was a senior in high school, or I had just graduated actually, and Kobe and them lost to the Celtics. And then the next year they beat the Magic in the finals. Sorry to bring up a sore subject for you, but I guess I'll just pile on while we're both miserable. But essentially, like when they asked the Lakers, like after winning that title, and they said, yeah, we thought about that Celtic series every single day for the last 365 days. And we were not going to lose to anybody. And that is what motivated us. And Phil talked about it, and Phil Jackson, obviously. And we let that memory be what was part of the DNA of this championship team, is we used that. And so it is very hindsight's 2020. I didn't, not trying to say, oh, if I was Norvell, I'd have done something differently back then. I was fine with his answers back then. But it almost feels like to me, he probably used the snub the wrong way and maybe should have used it a little bit more than he did. Maybe should have used it to inspire his players to tell them, hey, you instead of them reading their press clippings of like how great you are, hey, yeah, you should be pissed off. We are going to use this. We are going to, hey, you don't want to run that extra lap? Like, think about what they did to you in December. So I don't know. I don't think there's like a certain specific right or wrong answer on this, but I almost think he may have misused the snub a little bit. And looking back, trying to find answers into what's going on here, I think he probably, if he had to do that over again, might have done it a little bit different. Instead of being a broken man that just looks like he's about to cry on the side of the sideline, he could have gone like, Darth Vader on the sideline all year and just been that pissed off guy of using the snub. So I don't know. I think he may have misused that a bit. Is that a hot take? We'll get right back to chatting with Richie, but first I do want to always give some love to our friends over at the National Mango Board. The next time you're shopping, go ahead and grab you a couple of mangoes. They were at the very front display at my Publix on Saturday when I was in there before the game, before I had my weekend ruined. And of course, as we always do, because my kids crave them, we grabbed a couple of mangoes. You're not having to enter a code. You're not having to give your social security number or blood type or anything like that. All we're asking you to do, grab a couple of mangoes the next time you're at your local grocer. If you want to tag us on social media, we certainly would appreciate that. But make sure you're grabbing some mangoes. Appreciate the Mango Board for their support of FSU athletics and our channel as well.
2 quick points. If Courtney Lee converts that alley-oop on the game 2 in LA, and if Derek Fisher never makes that 3, the Magic have an NBA Finals. So I just had to say that because it still sticks with me to this day. But no, yeah, I think he tried to take the high road, right? Mike Norvell. He took the high road. He said, okay, well, we're going to do what we can do, control what we can control, all that yada yada nonsense. I think he should have just went scorch earth and said, no, this is bullshit. We belonged in the playoffs. Like, call them out, call everybody out, call Kirk Herbstreit out. And I get the risk for that because unfortunately, just like in politics, we just had an election. The media has a ton of influence and more power than we would love them to have. Kirk Herbstreit and the brass at ESPN, they have a ton of power, and you do not want to piss them off if you're the head coach at a major university. I just think it was an unfortunate situation. I think, I think what frustrates me the most about it, and this is what put Mike in such a bad position. Even if Jordan never goes down, I don't think Florida State gets in.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think they would have found an excuse or a reason to leave Florida State out. That was just the convenient excuse, because you couldn't put Texas in, or you couldn't get Bama in without putting Texas in because Texas won at Bama. So someone had to get left out, and unfortunately, it was us. It was Florida State. But yeah, I think Mike. I think he should have been more aggressive in his media hits in terms of saying, "Listen, this is unacceptable. How does this happen?" Called people out, and I get why he didn't. He was just. I can't get mad. I'm mad at Mike for a lot of things. I can't get too mad at him for that situation because it was literally a no-win situation for him.
Yeah, it's a hard situation for him. I don't really know what more he could have done, but I do know that the snub absolutely shook him to his absolute core, and
You
it
saw it in
basically,
the live reaction. Yeah.
yeah, it basically undid everything that he did, or that he preached for the 4 years that he was there. Hey, if you just trust the process, if you trust the work, if you just don't worry about the results, that'll take care of itself. And that's not what happened. Florida State did all those things well, and they did trust the work, and they did fight for their fallen brother, and all these things, right? Like all these little, cliche things that we want to say about Jordan going down and everything else. But I think he went from, like Mike had a clear and defined message before the snub happened of like, hey, this is what's going to happen. And to me, to go back to that message after that message, not Mike's fault, but to go back to that message after your message had then been disproven, right? At that point, the committee, whether you think they're right or wrong, the committee disproved Mike's message. The committee disproved Mike's theory on just do the right things and it'll all work out your way. And so
quick, it reminds me the locker room video after Florida State beat Louisville. Mike is pumped up and he says, "We ain't done yet." And then less than 12 hours later, that goes down. To your point, DJ.
yeah,
That was
I just think he didn't know how to, and even if you don't use the snub the way that I'm saying you should, or even if you don't, like he didn't know or doesn't know or hasn't figured out a way to change what he's preaching. And I think if you preach to kids for 3 or 4 years, X, Y, Z, and then this will happen, right? Do 1, 2, and 3, and then this will happen. And then they do 1, 2, and 3, and this doesn't happen. He hasn't figured out a way to motivate his team or have his team trust him and believe in him again. And it's not really his fault that they didn't get in, right?
No.
But that moment broke him, and it probably broke Florida State under him. Like we've talked about this. I don't really see a way that he gets it back. I don't really see a way that he fixes this. And it's an impossible situation. I don't think any coach in the country would have known how or what to say in that spot or in that moment. What to do in that moment. I'll tell you what I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have given the entire staff raises and extensions. Yeah. But he didn't know how to respond to it with recruiting. He didn't know how to respond to it with his own players. He didn't know how to respond to it with motivating his team. He didn't know how to respond to it with the portal. He didn't know how to respond to it with retaining his players and having to pay too much money to keep a bunch of these losers around. And so all that said, I don't know what he should have done differently, how he should have used it differently. I don't get paid X million dollars a year to figure those things out, man. That is on a guy like Mike Norvell to figure out, not me or you, who just kind of opines on it on Sundays and Wednesdays when we're logged in here to the podcast. So I don't know, tough situation. I don't really know what he should have done differently, but I know that the way he did it certainly didn't work out.